All right, thank you guys for joining us for the last part of our interview with Joy and Travis as we're talking about relationships. And in this one today, we're going to be talking about marriage. So as relationships progress, and in the last one, we were talking a little bit of what do the early stages look like, and once you're kind of past those, what does that look like? But once relationships start getting a little bit more serious, how do you kind of get in that mindset, or how do you process like knowing when to move forward into engagement and marriage, and what does it look like to really process through some of those things as a college student in a more serious relationship?
Well, one of the things that I'll take it back to, even though we've talked about it the last couple episodes as well, is the heart, and trying to lead your heart rather than allowing your heart, which is deceitfully wicked above all things, which is a little dramatic, but biblical. So it is like, okay, I gotta lead my heart. And one of the most difficult places to lead your heart is in relationships, because it's so emotional, and there's so many things that go into it. And that's where you really allow community to step in. That's where you really allow godly voices to step in and allow people to speak into your life that know what's going on in your life. And so that's certainly a piece of it, where obviously you're, as Joy said in the last episode, blown away. Like, I mean, they're not that they're perfect, but that there is this place of like, I really want to live the rest of my life with this person. And as you're feeling that, you're allowing people to like say, hey, awesome. Like, why? Like, what are your callings like together? How do your personalities match up? What do y'all do for fun? What's your communication like? Is that, are those things good? Again, not perfect. That's something you'll work on your entire life. But, allowing somebody to speak into that before you've made up your mind that like, this is the one, and so like, hey, I'm thinking that, please speak into that. So I think that's a piece of like, what does it look like to move forward, or how do I know when I'm ready to move forward? I think those are some of the conversations you're wanting to have with others. That's some of the processing that you're wanting to do with the Lord in terms of this person's character and their calling, and like, okay, really the rest of my life. I mean, outside of your decision to follow Jesus, there's no bigger decision that you are going to make than who you will marry, because they will have such an impact on your life, how you walk out your calling, what your kids will turn out like. I mean, there's so much implication, and that's not to be fearful about, but it is to like be sobered about. Like, hey, God, I want to. I don't want to rush into something if this isn't you. And so you're looking at a lot of the things that we talked about last time about why should I start dating somebody, or what would lead us into like being a boyfriend, girlfriend, and you feel like you've come to the conclusion of those things. Like, this person is humble, teachable, and willing to change. I am seeing a longevity, a history of serving and walking with Jesus, of loving others and being vulnerable. So you're seeing these patterns that you're like, I'm convinced, and so now I put it in the hands of the Lord, and I'm excited. Like, obviously there should be a lot of excitement, a lot of joy when you think about moving to that next stage.
And I just want to reiterate the staying submitted to people in your life along the way. And starting that now, even before you're in a relationship, or to this point of this decision, because what happens is you get to this point of give me feedback, and we're thinking about marriage and maybe engagement, and it's a really hard challenge to hear and to receive and to actually take. If you haven't submitted yourself to authority or to people in your life all along the way, it's going to be really hard at that point when you're like, your heart's all in, you're all in, they're all in, and then you have a challenging conversation with someone that maybe isn't 100% for you, or maybe not 100% for you getting married for you, but not for you marrying this person. And it can be really hard to hear regardless, but especially if you haven't submitted yourself to people along the way. So that's just an encouragement at this point to make sure you have those people that you're fully submitted to along the way. And I just want to also reiterate the calling piece, that are you going in the same direction? Do your callings line up? Do you want to Do you want the same things? Are you stirred by the same things in the big picture, on a larger scale? Because like Travis said, it is the second most important decision that you will ever make in your life. And their walk with Jesus, their shortcomings, their calling, all those things you'll be directly affected by, positively or negatively. And so it's a good process to go through at that stage, all along the way, but then at that stage of, okay, this is getting more serious. Could this be the person that I marry?
And you want to allow that community to speak in, and you want to, as best you can, to continue to press in to hear God, because when you do begin to fall in love, I mean, it becomes a very hard place to kind of turn back from, particularly when you're in that kind of romantic stage of love where you're not married, so there's not the commitment, there's not necessarily all the challenges of marriage that we'll get into maybe just a little bit here later, but there's just this, you're in that honeymoon kind of phase of it all, and you are there's a couple things that are happening. One, you're seeing, in some ways, the best that person, you're seeing them at their best, at their high, because they're in love and they're pursuing it or whatever. Also, there's the phrase "love is blind," right? So in some ways that's needed, and that's the gift of God, that you can and that is love. You overlook faults. You don't keep a record of wrong. Those kind of things. But it also can be detrimental when maybe some people are telling you, like, hey, I don't know about this guy or this aspect of his character. It feels like this or that, and you're like, no, it's this, and you're seeing only the positive attributes, or you're saying to yourself, they'll grow, they'll get better in that, and that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to push through red flags. You don't want to. You want to talk them through, and we're all about believing the best about others, but in this particular scenario, it's like if there's red flags that you have or that others have, there is no rush here. There's no rush. This person is not going to complete you. God completes us. There's a person that will perfectly complement you, or maybe not perfectly, but will complement you, in that God gives them to you, and they draw out the best in you, and they're used by God to refine you, and there's wonderful things about them and about what your marriage would look like. But this person doesn't complete you. You don't need them to be fulfilled. You need God. God does that. And then he gives you the gift in someone else through marriage of them adding a lot to your life. And in some ways they do bring completeness, and you feel some of those aspects. But truly that comes from God. And so I say that just to say, don't get into that mindset where, like, if this doesn't happen, like, I won't be completed, or I'll be such a lot. Like, it is worth momentary pain, significant pain. It is worth that momentary, and maybe not, I'm not talking about momentary like that. It might be months, it might be a year, it might be 18 months of pain. But I guarantee you, just having walked with people that have been very quick to marry, or maybe even married somebody that was a Christian, but just kind of nominal, went to church here and there, but the rest of their life has been dictated by the lack of passion in that other person, the lack of the Jesus-centeredness that other person walks in, and or some of the red flags that they push through, and people said, hey, it's, and you want friends in your life that'll say, hey, and that's that hard, hey, I don't think I know you love this person or whatever. But so you've got to, and as hard as it is, allow community to speak in, lead your heart in those ways, because of the magnitude of the decision. Now, and hopefully it's not like causing fear, like, oh no, like, what if I get it wrong, or what if that's again where you're trusting the Lord, but you're listening to community, and you're just making sure that prayerfully you're asking Lord, you're seeking counsel, and you're moving forward at the right pace. So yeah.
We've talked a lot about character, just in general, in some of that you're dating and somebody that you might marry. And now you guys are starting to talk a little bit more about red flags and what you kind of do when those start showing up. And so I think one of them is just in communication. Like, communication obviously is a very foundational part of a lot of relationships. And so what does that healthy communication look like in a relationship, especially when you're moving towards marriage? And what do you do when some of those red flags come up, and what do those even look like in that context?
Yeah.
Well, I think there's two aspects of communication. There's one that would be just your general communication. Are you able to share not only surface level or topical kind of things, which that's important, that there's overlapping interests, that you can talk about things that are just lighthearted or fun, or those kind of things, so that there's an ability to get into one another's worlds or the interests of one another. But then that communication gets really important when you start getting heart level, where you are talking about feelings and emotions. And I think, this could be different in different relationships, but usually there's going to be one person that's a little better at not only just communicating, but being in touch with their own feelings and their own emotions, and being more adept at communicating those. So it's not that the most important thing is probably not, this person is just so in touch with their feelings, or because they just may not be that good at it, or they may come from a family of origin of like, we just didn't talk about these things, but there needs to be a willingness to talk about those things. There needs to be, I know for us, I felt like, I was like, let's just go play a game, or let's just go hang out, or but actually, one of the things Joy has always been good at, and now I've grown in it, in my ability, where she doesn't have to always do this, but she was really good at drawing me out with questions, and I think the important part for her was the willingness, the desire. Even if I didn't know how, or I didn't know how to express it, I wanted to, and there was a willingness, and then kind of evidence of growth, or like of being able to communicate those things. And I think the other piece of that communication, the general communication, is not only being able to speak it, but being interested in it. Like that there's a real interest and listening. Obviously, on that side of things, some people want to dive in and like help and give a solution, and maybe that other person's like, hey, I just need you to hear me. So those are the things that you figure out along the way. But I think that the things you're looking for, like, hey, they really want to hear me. They really want to know me. They really, it's not like, okay, let's move on, or like, there's like, they really care about getting to know me, and they want to get into my pain. They want to be in it with me. Like I don't feel alone. I don't feel like he doesn't really care. She doesn't really seem that concerned. She thinks it's ridiculous. Like that's the kind of red flags, I think, when it's like, are you expressing that? And then the other side of it's conflict resolution. Yeah. That would be the other piece, the specific element of communication that you want to make sure. There's going to be a lot more, most times there's going to be a lot more conflict once you are married than when you are engaged, but there'll be some conflict, and so you want to begin to see how you communicate in a conflict. And of course there's a lot to learn in that realm, but you are looking at things. You can look at how they do that with their family of origin. How do they resolve conflict? How does the person you're interested in marrying, how do they handle that with their mom or their dad, and then how does that, when it does come up in your relationship, how are you handling it, or how are you growing in that? And so the red flags in that would be probably along the lines of anger and or kind of stuffing, like not like completely avoiding conflict and not being willing to enter into it, even if it's a little messy or imperfect. Those would be some of the bigger red flags, because nobody does conflict perfectly. But again, there's this willingness, and there's a softness, and even if it's like, I don't know how I feel about it, or because again, family of origin could be very different. Like Joy's family of origin, they did a lot more conflict, and it was a lot louder than my family of origin. And so sometimes she'll say things, and I feel like it's very confrontational. She's like, I'm just talking. I'm like, well, we didn't ever talk like that. We didn't do conflict really that much. It was just kind of everything's okay and we're going to just move on or whatever. So there's all those kind of things which are going to be normal. And but the red flags are kind of more of the anger, the stuffing, the unwillingness to go there would be more on the red flag side of things. So
that's good. And so when earlier you talked about like the magnitude of that decision, which clearly is a very important one. And so it's very easy for that to just become like every kind of the point of focus in your life, I guess. Like maybe there's like God and the person that you're dating or that you want to be married to. And so how do you continue to maintain friendships and like relationships with your family and other relationships outside of that one in a healthy way as you move forward into engagement and marriage?
Yeah, and I think with that, it's kind of what Travis was mentioning with the Francis Chan book that he said, the marriage book the book that he wrote on marriage. It actually wasn't about marriage. It was actually about like...
Barely.
Yeah, right after Jesus and basing on your marriage will be okay. I think there's going to be a natural season where you obviously are spending a lot of time together. You're developing your relationship. You're always, it seems like you're always together or trying to get time together and squeeze in this hour and that hour. And that's normal and that's healthy and needed especially at the beginning of a relationship. But I think as you progress on, especially into engagement and as it transitions into marriage, if you're really about the calling that God's called you to, then that will be the case even as things get more serious. And you won't be each other's main priority all the time. Like, I just need to be with him all the time, every minute. And they think you're blinded to the things that actually God's calling you to do together. That, the goal of marriage, like Travis was saying, the goal of marriage is not to just complete each other and to have this companion forever. That is a benefit of marriage. Companionship is absolutely a benefit of marriage, but it's not the sole goal of marriage. That the goal is that we might together run after Jesus and see his kingdom come on the earth more than it could if we weren't together. That there's a way to do that together. So you're actually beginning to explore that and figure that out as your relationship gets more serious and as you move into engagement and as you evaluate, is this the person that I want to spend the rest of my life with? You're actually thinking, are we advancing the kingdom of God together? Are we actually running after God together? And are we complementing each other in that way? And what does that look like? And are we becoming so focused and are we so internal that we actually are missing the very thing that God's called us to in being together? And again, there's an ebb and flow in that because there's an attraction and there's an excitement and all of that about the relationship. And but I think when that overtakes other things that you both really value, and things that you like God's called you to, whether that's with family and friendships or people you're reaching out to or different things, and that is a not say a red flag. I'm not going to marry that person, but it definitely a conversation to go, hey, let's pause and really evaluate what is this season going to be like for us, and what do we want to be about? Because again, you're setting a groundwork right there for what your future relationship is going to be for years and years and years to come. So you don't want to have this idea that, well, when we're married, then we'll start running after these things that we feel like we're impassioned about. You want to begin to ask God, what does that look like right now? How do we walk that out right now and see that multiply out as the longer we're together?
Yeah, because there's two sides to it. So there will certainly be a need for more time spent. That's one of those gauges we talked about the last episode, is that, and so if you're moving towards engagement and in marriage, then the time that you're spending together is going to increase, and it should increase because there's more things you're talking about. You're spending extended time and you're continuing to like grow in your relationship. And so and there maybe need to be conversations with like roommates or those types of things where the one side of it is that you will have less time to hang out with like all the girlfriends, right? So because before you were single or just kind of going on a date here and there, but now there's a committed relationship. So there needs to be understanding from roommates or friends or family that, okay, things are going to change a little bit. At the same time, there needs to be intentionality on the part of the couple that, hey, we want to still be good friends. We still want to invest in others. We still want to be outward focused. And we've probably seen engagement as one of the worst seasons in a person's life of being self-focused and like, this is our time and this is our wedding and this is our, it's like, that's not even you. Like, what just happened? That's not you. That's not who you are. Like, and so really, certainly giving time for yourselves. You need that time, but being very intentional about when we are with others, like that we're loving and we're serving, and it's not like, I think we've all had the friends that are not even engaged, but just like, they're not really fun to be around because they're just so absorbed in one another, or because honestly, that can become one of those red flags that we were talking about in terms of like, okay, is our identity or our security so wrapped up in one another that it's just unhealthy? That there can be unhealth there, where we all face insecurities at times. Like, hey, we were at this like little party together and I didn't feel like you gave me any attention. I felt really insecure about that. That can be a valid thing. That's different than, so like, hey, we don't ever give attention to anybody else. So, and there's communication there, but what you do want is somebody that feels ultimately secure in like who they are, their identity in Jesus and who's made them to be, where you're not their source of identity, or at least their sole or even primary source of identity and security. You will provide that from, as you move into marriage, like there are places where you provide that for one another. But in a serious dating, boyfriend, girlfriend, moving into engagement, there has to be a place of like, because it's so healthy for marriage that we're secure in God. We know we have our identity in Jesus, and you give me some of that, and I so value what Joy thinks about me or what I do. I value her affirmation, but my identity is in Jesus. My security is in who He says I am, and that helps our marriage so much, because if we're having a bad day or if we're having a miscommunication, I'm not completely cratering because my identity ultimately is in Jesus. Now it hurts, and nobody else has ever given me quite the same like amount of affirmation that Joy does. I don't have that need from others. Like I need her affirmation, so it still makes it hard, but it doesn't. I don't go to the bottom. And so as you're kind of moving into that stage, it's like, okay, somebody that's really secure in their identity in Christ, and that helps us to serve, to live on mission. And I would say for those that are maybe moving into engagement or marriage, like in college or right out of college, like, and I don't know how many people, in our college ministry right now are in that stage, or I know there have been several that have been, but I would say, to them, so I don't know if you if everybody watched the first one, but in the singleness, we talked about, man, their single years are so much years to give to Jesus and to like give to Him, to run after God, because you're not married, you don't have a family. But I would say to those that get married young, obviously you do have to give attention to your marriage. I mean, the first year of marriage is so important. Joy's been talking about setting up rhythms and practices in your marriage of communication and different things, like, man, those are foundational. But because you are still young, you don't have family, and it maybe is going to be years before you have kids, you definitely want to get into a mindset of like, of course, we're going to have our time together. It's exciting to be, having a home together and all those kind of things. But we're going to live on mission. Like, we're going to, because I'm guessing, if you're that young, you're probably not gonna have kids 5 or 6 years. I mean, however long you have kids, fine. But there's probably a longer period of time. So like, let's run after Jesus. Let's spend a summer overseas. Or a year doing a stint. Let's really give ourselves to our pursuit of Him in these years, and really love others. Because I think one thing you have the opportunity to be is, because you're still a young adult, you're still in that season of life, you have the ability through having a healthy marriage that's focusing on others, to really be a place of stability, a place of life for all of your single friends, where they're in your home and there's just this home atmosphere where you're serving and loving people. So you have a unique opportunity if God does bring that person into your life earlier than normal and or than average or whatever. I'm not saying it's not normal, whatever. But yeah, so I think there's some opportunities there, but certainly we want to be a people that are others focused and serving others. So.
And I would say no matter when you get married, that you want to have a marriage on mission. And so, and that starts, like we said, that starts with engagement and then early marriage, and you want to, you do obviously you set aside good time together, but you are consistently, in every season you're saying, what is our mission? What are we about? What are we running after? And, outside of the walls of our home, what do we need to go after? And then kids will get out of that mix, and you bring your kids along on that same journey. Like, we're on a mission as a family, but that starts really early. That starts at the very beginning. You set that groundwork, and you set that up for your marriage.
And can I say one other thing? It's a little off, but kind of as we finish this up, and if you are getting married or whatever else, you can come to a marriage seminar, and that'll be next step. Because there's a lot more to talk about on marriage than this. But one thing that I would say is in the place of communication, when you're communicating love for another person, that you wouldn't be in a rush to do that. I think one thing that we've seen, and maybe we're a little old-fashioned, but I don't think it's just that. I think we've seen people communicate that at such early stages, and it's not like they're not lying or whatever. It's just there's an emotion that you feel that's real, and that you're enjoying somebody, and that you're. But one thing I think I'd like people to remember is that love is not just the emotion. That's a piece of it, is feeling this very loving emotion towards someone. But you're communicating something a lot more. I mean, we don't want to use the word love. I mean, we do, like we love pizza or we love this movie or whatever. And so that's, I think somehow we can go down that slope of like maybe being a little too early in communicating that. And I think there's a value to holding on to that and say, no, this is something I use for something I'm committed to. Like, and really where in the end, I think the goal would be like you're communicating that to the person that you are going to marry. Like that's so because when we're talking about loving someone, we're not casually throwing that out there, but we're communicating that in the way of intentionality and commitment, and so it's a little bit of a side note, but obviously in marriage, what we're wanting to grow and increase in is our love for one another, our commitment in every way, and our commitment to grow and to get better and to communicate better and to all those things. And so as you progress through those things, obviously as we're getting to this stage, the engagement and marriage, you are talking about love. I love you. Because I feel this commitment, and I feel this intentionality and this commitment to pursuing you for the rest of our lives. That's kind of what we're saying when we talk about love. And so yeah, I don't know, just a little side note there. But
yeah, I mean that was a great tangent. Yeah, and I just love that. I think in each stage and in each of these last 3 episodes that we've talked about, there has been this common theme of like self-reflection and kind of introspection of like evaluating with the Lord, like where am I at in singleness, in dating, and in marriage, and inviting the community around you to speak into that. And so there's this inward focus with the Lord, but then there's this outward invitation to the community around you. So both are just so important, and I think that has been a great just piece of advice in whatever stage you're at. And so that's great. Thank you guys. Yeah. Any other thoughts, just pieces of advice or anything you would say to college students that are either getting engaged while they're students or like are thinking about it very quickly after graduation or have weddings coming up that you just want to like give one last plug for?
Well, yeah, I mean it's the greatest and hardest thing, probably. I mean, every marriage is different. There's different personalities, different ways that you relate with one another, but it's beautiful. It's God ordained, and it takes a lot of work. And like I just said, about a lot of commitment and commitment to growing personally, and a commitment to giving grace, and a commitment to listening and hearing and understanding another person, and so if I think at one level, one of the things you've heard us saying is like, hey, there's no rush. God's timing is the right timing. As Joy said in the last episode, just running after Him, keeping our eyes fixed on Him. But when God does bring that person in front of you, and you guys decide to go in that direction, it's because you believe that God is going to be more greatly glorified through you coming together than He would you being apart from one another. And that's kind of the baseline thing. And to remember in the end that marriage is not meant to make you happy, but it's meant to make you holy. Now, that doesn't mean that there won't be happiness in marriage. We've experienced some of the greatest joys in our life in being married and having a family. But that God's even deeper desire is that you will experience holiness through your marriage relationship. And that sounds great, but a lot of times that comes through some of the friction and the refining and the dying to self and those hard moments that produce holiness in you, which is what we desire, which is a piece of that desire. Like, God, we believe you're going to be more greatly glorified through us. Part of that's through our ministry and through how we're going to relate with, serve and minister to others. But part of that's like because of the refining element that happens within our relationship. And so that's a great mentality to head into marriage with. It's not just to make me happy, because if that's what you think, like, oh, it's going to complete me and make me happy, and then it's like, oh, this is hard. Oh, I'm going to have to grow in holiness and lose some of my selfish desires and tendencies and go low. So there's a lot of that in there. But if you have that perspective from the front end, it helps a lot, knowing, okay, God is doing something. This is hard. I don't like him or her very much right now, but God's doing something in me. So that's a great perspective to enter in with, I think.
Yeah, and I just, Travis wrote a song for me when we got engaged, which maybe you should...
Like a sunset on a rainy day.
But
you can buy it on iTunes if you want to hear more. Is it still iTunes?
Our kids could also sing it for you. But there was this line in it that said, every need she has, Jesus will fulfill, and I'll be there. And cheesy and whatever, amazing, romantic, beautiful. But it really has been kind of the mantra of our marriage, that every need that I have, every need that Travis has, Jesus is going to fulfill, and then we'll be there for each other. We're never going to leave each other's side. We're going to help each other. We're going to complement each other. We're going to run together. But every need I have, Jesus is going to fulfill in me, and then he's going to be by my side. So just love that. I mean, we'll release the whole song to you later, but it's been a huge piece for us from the beginning of our marriage, and then even 15, 16 years down the road. So yeah,
awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. We look forward to hearing that song in the near future. I hope you guys enjoyed this 3-part interview with Joy and Travis. And yeah, it's just been a joy to interview you guys and hear just all the wisdom that you have to share. So thank you. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you know that as a college staff, we miss you guys so much, and we look forward to seeing you soon.